Two more baseball Tigers hit the transfer portal. Is it time to start reaching for the panic button? We're talking about it today's episode of Locked on LSU. Let's get it.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. So please smash that like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're there. Jay Johnson loses two more players to the transfer portal. I got thoughts there and who the Tigers might be targeting. Brian Kelly has his sights set on not one, not two, but three upcoming commits. We'll check those boxes. And some some former Tigers earning spots in their future and all-star games. We'll get to that on today's episode. So thrilled to have you with us here. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Please download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So Tuesday was the transfer portal deadline for players to enter the portal. And I think it's worth mentioning and just giving a little background on this as well, just as we sort of push off from the dock, because two more players did enter their name into the transfer portal, and I think they're taking two very different paths. We'll get to that here in a second. But whenever this spring portal window opens, players have 30 days to enter. So it opened at the beginning of June, and so July 2nd was the expiration of that portal date. That does not mean that players have to pick their school, name their destination, commit, sign, enroll, any of those things by July 2nd. That's just the deadline for players to enter their name in the portal. All they have to do is be enrolled for the next semester at their new destination. That's it. So it's just to give yourself the option. Remember, you can always withdraw from the portal, but it's to give yourself the option of going somewhere else, which is why guys enter the portal by this date, July 2nd. And two more LSU players entered the portal. One is junior pitcher Thatcher Herd, and the other is freshman infielder Ryan Kucherak. Now, these two players, I believe, are in the portal for two very, very different reasons. I know a lot of people were probably surprised by Thatcher Herd. I was not. I still very much believe Thatcher Herd is going to be drafted high. He's going to sign a pro contract, and his college career is over for whatever it is worth. I checked today, MLB.com rates Thatcher Herd as the number 114 overall prospect in the draft. Spoke to a buddy of mine who's a scout for a National League team who says he projects Thatcher Herd in round 4. If that's the case, Thatcher Herd is going to hear his name called. He's going to sign a contract. He's going to make money, and his college career will be over. But the draft is screwy, and you never exactly know what might happen in the draft. And so, but I mean, the MLB draft is truly unique. It's the only draft among the major American sports whereby a player can hear their name called and still go back to school, maintain their eligibility. You know, in the NFL and the NBA, you have to enter the draft and you have a deadline by which you can withdraw. But if you're in the draft, you're in the draft and there's no going back. It's like in Field of Dreams. When you cross those rocks, there's no going back. So Thatcher Herd entering the transfer portal is very similar to what we talked about on yesterday's episode with Justin Lohr. It's just giving him options. So Thatcher Herd is going to get picked. He's going to sign. I would say there's a 98% probability that Herd is picked and signs and his college career is over. But what if something unforeseen happens in the draft or between now and the draft and Herd goes undrafted or something? Well, if he wants to come back to school, he can always return to LSU. No doubt Jay Johnson would take him. But what if the roster's full? Or what if there's a spot in another, after the draft where another team has a better opportunity for Herd to get innings? That might make more sense than returning to LSU. Well, entering the portal now gives him that option. So I know a lot of people saw Thatcher Herd and he came here with such promise from UCLA and was so dynamite in the 2023 championship run, and obviously started the final, the national championship game against Florida, and was fantastic, going 6 innings in that game and pacing LSU to a national championship that night. And we all expected Hurd to be the Friday night guy in 2024, and it never really materialized. But, his legacy is solidified because of what he did in the postseason in 2023 on the way to a national championship. But I do think Thatcher Herd's college career is done either way. This is just an insurance policy, a safety net, if you will. Now, Ryan Kucherak is a surprise. Ryan Kucherak is a surprise because, as it looks right now, there is playing time available on LSU's infield. We've talked about it ad nauseum. Stephen Milam returns, and he may very well be the only infielder to return. Michael Braswell could certainly be drafted and signed. I fully expect Bear Jones is going to be drafted and signed for $800K to $1 million. Alex Milazzo and Hayden Travinski are out of eligibility. Tommy White's going to be drafted at third base. So really, the only guy you have coming back is Stephen Milam. So there are at-bats and innings and starts to be had all over LSU's infield. So the fact that Ryan Kucherak isn't staying to try to win one of those jobs is a surprise. Now, if you rewind the clock a little bit, he was the number 2 shortstop in Arizona. He was limited his senior year of high school with an injury. So, had he been able to play a full senior year, maybe his star would have shown a little brighter in the recruiting sense. And in 2024, he played in just 16 games for LSU, and he struck out 5 times in 12 at-bats. So a limited sample size, didn't do much offensively, but was good defensively when we got to see him. Kucherak going into the portal is a surprise. And when I look around the infield now, I think Jay Johnson's best option is re-recruiting Michael Braswell. Look, LSU is still very much in the mix for 3 big-time infielders in the transfer portal. Caden Kent from Texas A&M is still in the portal. And, we've talked about him, and initially when he went into the portal, it was expressed to me that he was going to be a heavy LSU lean. Now, does that change a bit with Michael Early being hired at Texas A&M? 3 of the more prominent prospects in this portal class from A&M have decided to stay in College Station, with Laviolette and Schott and Gavin Grahovac, the third baseman, have all made the decision to remain in College Station. So Caden Kent conceivably could. The only thing I knew he wasn't going to do was follow Jim Schlossnagle to Austin. Now, will Caden Kent stay in College Station and play for Michael Early? Maybe. But there is absolutely an opportunity for Kent at LSU. Wyatt Hensler, who is currently a Texas A&M commit. We've talked about him from Penn, UPenn up in the Ivy League, a guy that's been a 4-year starter. He started 161 games. He's hit 350. And in his career, he went from 0 homers to 14 to 18 to 22 this past season. So you got a guy that's going to be a 5th-year player who's currently committed to A&M, but took a visit to LSU this past weekend, obviously with Jim Schlossnagle no longer in College Station. That's a possibility. And LSU still in the mix as of now for Gavin Colleen, who is the number 1 player in the portal, the shortstop from Louisville. And LSU has had him on campus for a visit. And we told you, he's sort of waiting for the College World Series to wrap to take his final visit to Texas A&M. Does that change now with Jim Schlossnagle being gone? I don't know. But, the places he had visited were Vandy, Tennessee, LSU, and was waiting on A&M. Now with Texas having Jim Schlossnagle, does he include the Longhorns here? Possibly. And I just want to remind you again, nothing needs to be imminent here. Paul Skeens didn't announce his commitment to LSU until July 29th. So really, it's just as long as you got your spot for the start of the semester and you're enrolled, that's really all that matters. But, perhaps LSU's best path here is going to be re-recruiting Michael Braswell. And we've talked about Braswell a bunch in his future. And he's a guy that, as you look at it, is probably a back of the draft guy. I've been told maybe his number that a team might be willing to pay $80,000 to $100,000, $80,000 to $100,000. Do you take that, or can LSU scrape together some NIL money, get Braswell back for another year? You maintain Braswell, Milam on your middle infield, and hopefully you land Kent or Hensler to be your third baseman. And then one of the other transfers you've already gotten with Luis Hernandez or Eddie Yaman, maybe as your plug and play first baseman there. So Jay Johnson can piece it together, but LSU at this point desperately needs infielders. And if it's retaining Michael Braswell or signing a couple of the guys that I just mentioned, or maybe kicking the tires further down the list of your transfer portal wish list, might be LSU's path, because as of right now, They are very, very thin on numbers on that infield. That's something that Jay Johnson and his staff will have to address immediately. Brian Kelly and his staff continue addressing the 2025 class. And boy, the rest of this week could be very, very fruitful for Brian Kelly. We're going to get to that as we continue here on Locked On LSU, your team every day. We're brought to you here by Game Time. And man, I tell you, I love going to Major League Baseball games. Matter of fact, just as before I was recording this, I was watching the Yankees and the Reds, big Yankee fan. Whoever your favorite MLB team is, Game Time is a great opportunity to get you in the stadium. Listen, as summer starts to wind down, maybe you want to pop over to Houston to catch Bregman and the Astros. Maybe you're going to hop on a bird and go somewhere out of state to go follow or watch your favorite baseball team. Maybe you're going to be over in Arlington for the MLB All-Star Game here in a couple weeks. Well, Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. As you get closer to first pitch, prices on the Game Time app actually go down. So you can actually play that game. It's pretty fun. If you want to wait closer to first pitch, you might actually get a much better price. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, so you're never surprised by the price you pay. You can get views from your seat there at the Game Time app and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. So download the Game Time app. Do it right now. Pull out your phone. If you're watching us, if you're listening to us, of course, you can just continue to listen while you go to the App Store. Download the Game Time app and take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Brian Kelly and his staff have done pretty incredible work so far with this 2025 recruiting class. And to be third in the country right now with only 12 commitments shows the definition of quality over quantity. By comparison, Alabama has leapfrogged LSU. They're now second in this recruiting class with 21 commits. 9 more commitments Alabama has over LSU, and they're one spot higher in the recruiting rankings. Well, LSU is looking at even more blue chips, and I want you to file away these dates. There's a couple of names you need to know and dates that are coming up this week and next that are going to be really relevant for LSU as they creep closer here. So on the 4th of July, Zion Williams, don't get confused, not the power forward. This is a defensive lineman out of the state of Texas, out of Lufkin. Bo Davis, while he was the defensive line coach at UT, was recruiting Zion Williams. 6'4", 315. He was a heavy Texas lean. When Bo Davis took the LSU job, he just continued recruiting Zion Williams, and Zion Williams will announce his commitment on the 4th of July. And it is a heavy lean to LSU. As a matter of fact, the recruiting prediction machine over at On3 has Zion Williams as a 96.6% chance of landing as part of the LSU class. So remember, of the 12 commits right now that LSU has, only 3 of them are on the defensive side of the ball. You have 9 offensive players and 3 defensive players, 2 linebackers and an edge. So Tigers have to get busy here on the interior defensive line and in the secondary. So Zion Williams would certainly qualify there. And as we've talked about the importance of recruiting in-state, when you can go out of state and get an elite prospect, you do it, especially when there's a relationship there. And this certainly qualifies with Damian Shanklin. So Zion Williams is set to commit on Thursday, on the 4th of July. One day later, on Friday, July 5th, Damian Shanklin is set to announce. Now, Damian Shanklin is the number 1 player in the state of Indiana, and he's the number 86 overall player in the country. So you're talking about a top 100 player in the country. You know my theory all the time. You don't need to fly states away to go get a guy that's a 3-star and well down the list in his developmental project. Get tons of guys in Louisiana who it means so much to put on that purple and gold. But if you want to go to Indiana to recruit the number 86 overall player in the country, as a matter of fact, 247 Sports has Shanklin as the number 48 overall player in the country. I'm looking at the composite that has him at 86. 24/7 has him as the 48th, the top 50 player in the country. You want to go get a 6'5", 235-pound edge rusher that's a top 50 overall player in the country? Yeah, go get that guy when you can get him. So Damian Shanklin, he is a 71% lean to LSU on the recruiting prediction machine. Notre Dame in second place at 21.8%. So LSU a heavy favorite to land Zion Williams on Thursday, Damian Shanklin on Friday. And then Jace Thomas is another name worth keeping an eye on. He's a lightly regarded guy as far as the recruiting rankings and everything, but he's out of Destrehan. He's an athlete at Destrehan, but LSU's recruiting him as a safety, and we've talked about LSU needing to bolster the secondary and the defensive backs in this class. And Jace Thomas would certainly qualify there as a really good athlete out of Destrehan, entering his senior year, a guy who came to LSU, camped at LSU. Again, sometimes this happens in recruiting where guys are athletes, so they play different positions in high school, but you're recruited by a certain to college to play a different position. And that's the instance here with Jace Thomas, where he's 6'1", 175 pounds, and LSU's recruiting him as a safety. And it looks very much like coming up in the second week of July, Jace Thomas, a heavy lean toward LSU. Actually, it's a 96.8% odds of landing in Baton Rouge on the recruiting prediction machine. So LSU's got 12 commits, 9 on the offensive side. We've been asking, when are the defensive commits going to start coming? Well, apparently that is coming just in a couple of days. So be on the lookout on the 4th of July and on the 5th of July for a couple of commits on the defensive side of the ball for the LSU Tigers. All right, there's a couple more things I want to get to before we wrap up today's episode. An interesting basketball series was scheduled this week that I want to talk about, and some former Tigers doing work at the next level who've been honored. We want to give them our hat tip, and we'll do that as we continue here on Locked on LSU. You might have missed the news. LSU has scheduled a hoop series with SMU. Remember, SMU now of the ACC. That is now a Power 5 opponent, with SMU going into the ACC this season. But what's interesting is they'll play this upcoming season in the 2024-2025 season, and then in the 2025-2026 season. The first game will be in Fort Worth. Remember, SMU is in Dallas, but the first game will be in Fort Worth, and then the return trip will be in New Orleans at the Smoothie King Center. So this is going to be a couple of neutral site games with LSU and SMU. And I just want to lay this out there because sometimes I think it's natural for fans to think maybe more highly of their program, the team they love, than they actually are. And that might be the case with LSU basketball. And something that I remind LSU fans of all the time is that LSU as a program isn't good enough and hasn't been consistently good enough to be able to schedule home-and-home series with elite programs in college basketball, like Duke or Kentucky or Kansas or Villanova or Gonzaga. You're just not going to get those games. Sometimes you'll have an opportunity to play Power 5 non-conference games in neutral site, like holiday tournaments, like tip-off tournaments or Thanksgiving tournaments or Christmas tournaments. And we've seen that, or like with the SEC Big 12 Challenge, which we've seen over the years. That's really LSU's only opportunity until you start winning enough to where you're going to be an attractive opponent to be able to schedule one of those marquee programs to come to your building. Just to illustrate this a bit further. Last year, LSU played 4 Power 5 non-conference opponents. They played Wake Forest in Charleston. They played Syracuse away. They played Kansas State in Baton Rouge, but that was part of the SEC Big 12 Challenge. And then they played Texas in Houston at the Toyota Center. So you played, 2 neutral site games, and one was part of the SEC Big 12 Challenge, and you played at Syracuse. 2 seasons ago, you played K-State in the Cayman Islands. You played Wake Forest at State Farm Arena in Atlanta. And then you played Texas Tech in Baton Rouge as part of the SEC Big 12 Challenge. 3 years ago, you played Penn State down in Florida. You played Wake Forest. Incidentally, LSU played Wake Forest 3 years in a row. That's weird. You played Wake Forest in Florida. You played Georgia Tech at State Farm Arena. And then you played TCU in Fort Worth in the SEC Big 12 Challenge. In the 2020-2021 season, you didn't play a single Power 5 non-conference opponent. And the year before that, you remember you played USC out at the Staples Center, and then you did play Texas and Austin as part of the SEC Big 12 Challenge. That was it. So outside of the SEC Big 12 Challenge, LSU hasn't had a Power 5 opponent come to the Maravich Center. You're going to have to earn those opportunities. In the meantime, you take opportunities like this as you can get them. And SMU has been a solid basketball program, a team that conceivably could win 20 games. And, if that's what, I know Will Wade's not the coach anymore, but one of the things Will Wade always did just exceptionally well was he knew how to build a schedule and play the math game to satisfy the net rating and the RPI. Like he knew, okay, we're going to play, I believe one year it was maybe East Tennessee State. And he's like, I know East Tennessee State's going to win 23 basketball games and they're going to finish in the top 2 of their conference. And because it's not just opponents winning percentage, but opponents winning percentage that goes into the net. Like he knew all of that. Like he knew how to build that roster. And I think Matt McMahon is trying to do the same thing here, where you kind of take what you can get. And SMU going into the ACC as a Power 5, now non-conference. You just don't have the luxury of being good enough to get a game like this in your building. So you play at a neutral site, get a little bit of a payout, you get a nicer opponent on the schedule. So congrats to LSU for locking that in with SMU. So Tigers will play in Fort Worth this coming season, and then they'll be in and they'll be at the Smoothie King Center in 2 seasons. Before we get out of here, I want to give a hat tip. Angel Reese was named a WNBA All-Star, not like a rookie team or anything like that, a WNBA All-Star in her first season. So major congrats to Angel Reese, who she and Caitlin Clark, we know, have gone into the WNBA with much fanfare, and they've drawn an insane amount of attention for the game, and they deserve it. Angel Reese is averaging a double-double right now in her rookie season. She was just named the Rookie of the Month in the WNBA, and she's deserving of this All-Star nod. So the WNBA All-Star game is Saturday, July 20th out in Phoenix, if you're interested. So Reese became the 3rd fastest player in WNBA history to record 200 points and 200 rebounds. So the Bayou Barbie is now the All-Star Barbie, and LSU has a pretty cool graphic of that up right now if you want to check it out. And then also, congrats to Dylan Cruz and Trey Morgan. They've been named to the MLB All-Star Futures roster. Now, the All-Star weekend is coming up. Actually, the weekend that will be in Arlington for SEC Football Media, or Dallas for SEC Football Media Days. But the All-Star Game and the Skills Showcase will be at 3 o'clock on Saturday the 13th. So that's not this Saturday, but the next. And it'll be televised on MLB Network. Now, Trey Morgan has been battling an injury. So he is on the inactive roster, but he is on the roster for the Futures game. So good for him. And then Dylan Cruz, we know, was just called up to AAA in the Nationals organization. And as a matter of fact, he is currently the number 4 overall prospect in all of minor league baseball right now by MLB Pipeline. So congrats to Dylan Cruz and to Trey Morgan for their great starts, their minor league careers, and good luck to both of those players who will be participating. Now, Morgan, as I just mentioned, is inactive, but Cruz will be participating if you want to check it out on Saturday, July 13th. And, of course, to Angel Reese a week later, Saturday, July 20th in the WNBA All-Star Game. Okay, y'all, that's just about going to do it for us here on this July the 3rd edition of Locked on LSU. Remember, we will be here on the 4th of July, and we'll be here every day for Locked on LSU. So please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here weekdays on Locked on LSU. And, of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, we sincerely appreciate that as well. If you would subscribe to the YouTube channel and smash that like button. And if you're on YouTube, remember, Locked On has launched the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. It's called Locked On Sports Today, and it's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Okay, have a great one, and we'll see you next time for Locked On LSU, your team every day.